Welcome to this week's Live with Love. I'm Julie Roginski here with my co-founder of Lift Our Voices, Gretchen Carlson. Hey, Gretchen.
Hey, what's going on?
It's been another crazy week, and I wanted to talk to you about something that is, I think, interesting to you and me as Fox alum, which is this very bizarre, but maybe not so bizarre lawsuit that related to Jeffrey Epstein, that Donald Trump filed against the parent company of Fox News and the parent company of the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones and Co., also against the Wall Street Journal publisher, and also, interestingly, against Rupert Murdoch, who is no longer actually in any position officially at Fox. He's the chairman emeritus of News Corp and Fox News Channel, but he is not in any position there now. What do you make of all this?
I was shocked, actually, when he did this on Friday, because I think it's a conundrum for both of them. I think that they both need each other in a weird way, with Fox News and sort of the Wall Street Journal now, although in the second term they've much more attacked Trump, but they're the mouthpiece for Trump. And so but I think it's a conundrum for Trump too, because Murdoch could decide to suddenly unleash Fox News to be covering all of these stories that they haven't, like Epstein and others. And that would be, that would be problematic for Trump. I think Rupert Murdoch likes to tweak Trump, because I know for a fact that Trump was not Fox's pick as the nominee for 2016 or 2024. Or 2020 for that matter, although he was the incumbent president. And so I think Murdoch likes to tweak him. And I think they've been doing that in the second presidency with the Wall Street Journal as the mouthpiece of doing that. So I think it's a conundrum for both of them. I don't think you agree with me, though.
I don't. I think Trump kind of holds all the cards here, because if you remember when Fox went a little bit crazy on Trump in 2020 and said that, oh, maybe he didn't actually win this election. If you remember, he just unleashed on them. And what he effectively did is say that it didn't really matter, because he was going to tell everybody to watch OAN, or he was going to tell everybody to watch other kind of Trumpy related networks, and Fox's ratings dropped. I mean, a lot of MAGA people just stopped watching Fox. But the biggest thing that Trump has going for him now that he didn't have going for him back in 2020 is he controls the FCC. He controls the levers of government. He can tell the FCC to strip the Fox news stations or the Fox local stations of their licenses. I mean, he can really make Murdoch's life hell if he wanted to, and use the government to do that. And we know he's got that in him to do it. And so I think the way this ends is the Wall Street Journal runs its story. It's interesting that they haven't produced the notebook. They clearly have it. Otherwise, they would never run that story. I cannot imagine Emma Tucker, the executive editor of the Wall Street Journal, ever allowing that story to run without having the evidence in hand. They have not produced it. And the reason I think they haven't produced it is because they are not holding it in abeyance so much as saying to Trump, well, if you don't pursue this, we will not release it. And the way this is probably going to end is the same way it ended with CBS, with Paramount, and with ABC, with Disney. There's going to be a settlement. It's not that the Wall Street Journal will acknowledge any wrongdoing or Dow Jones will acknowledge any wrongdoing, but I think ultimately there's going to be a settlement. They'll give him $15 million for his presidential library, and life will go on, right?
And I think there's a chance that doesn't happen. By the way, that's the complete end of journalism, because then I mean, and I know this is the slippery slope. Any story that Trump doesn't like, he's just going to file a lawsuit, and then this is just going to become the norm, that these companies are just going to pay them out, or maybe not. I don't know, but it is the end of journalism if this starts happening repeatedly. The one reason why I think this might be different, let me just go with this for a second, is because the Epstein story, who would have ever thunk that the Epstein story would be the one that would suddenly fracture MAGA and suddenly put us in this situation where now we have left the political realm and now it's into pop culture. So now this story has become intriguing to people who don't normally follow politics like you and I do every day, and a very small percentage of the American public does, right? Now it's out there. Like I thought there was a poll out yesterday, 80 to 90% of the American people want more information about the Epstein files, right? So you can't put that genie back in the bottle. So could it be that if Murdoch unleashes Fox News to start covering this and really covering it and talking about what's in all of this, and if Trump is implicated, who knows? So far, not. Could he, first of all, would they actually lose viewers? Because MAGA would be interested in hearing what Fox had to say about it, right? And if a few of them push over to OAN or Newsmax, I mean, those two entities have never, I know they picked up ratings after the election when Fox called it for Biden, but would they really ever take over Fox? And this is a lot more serious situation than even back then.
The answer, I think the answer is yes, because I think this would be it would be kind of mutually assured destruction if they did this. It would be awful for Trump if Fox suddenly went wall to wall with this. It would also be awful for Fox because they would lose viewers. If they lost it after 2020, they'd lose viewers now. And then the real question is, what does somebody like a Sean Hannity do? Somebody who's so deeply entrenched with Trump, is he suddenly going to listen to the Murdochs and say, oh, now I got to start covering Epstein? I mean, do they start doing that? Or is there a rebellion among some of these more MAGA inclined people within Fox News to say, we're not going to do it. And if you guys want to fire us, go right ahead, but we're not doing it.
Yeah, well, as we saw at Fox, they really shouldn't be paying these nighttime hosts so much money because it doesn't matter who they put in there. They put in a puppet. It doesn't matter. We saw that happen with Bill O'Reilly. We saw that. I mean, suddenly Jesse Waters is a star. He was a freaking intern. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. And I always said that you could just put a blow-up doll into the seat, and as long as it spewed the messaging and fed the red meat, it wouldn't matter. So maybe this changes the entire landscape of Fox. I mean, I don't know. We're way out on a limb right now.
I don't know. I mean, the show to watch, Gretchen, ironically, is your old show. It's Fox and Friends, because that's the show that, I don't know that people realize this, but I mean, you know this better than anybody else. That's the show that sets the template for the rest of the day, every single day, not just because of where it happens to be in the lineup, but because that's where the narrative comes down. And then the narrative goes out from 6 a.m. to 11 or midnight or whenever they finally go off the air with their original programming. And so, it's interesting to see what somebody like a Fox and Friends does, because unlike Hannity, who has his own relationship with Trump, the hosts there really are Fox News born, bred. They don't have their own radio empire like a Hannity does or a Laura Ingraham does.
Well, Brian has a radio show.
It does, but it's a Fox radio show. It's not independent of Fox.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can only speak to how the directives came down from Ailes when he was in power. I don't know how it works now. I mean, obviously, Fox and Friends has not covered this story. So I don't know. I mean, and it's always been the case where Bret Baier's show at 6 o'clock was a slightly more even keeled. And I think that's the only show that's really mentioned this as far as what's going on with it.
He golfs with Trump. He's personal friends with Trump. He lives down in Palm Beach. He golfs with Trump. I mean, we'll see how far he goes too.
Well, I think this is just a fascinating turn of events, because back to what I said originally, I think that it's a conundrum for both of them. And I'd love to be a fly on the wall to hear what Murdoch and Laughlin are talking about, because they're actually having strategy conversations. I don't think Trump's not having any strategy about this.
Oh, I bet you that there's probably a division there, I would think. I mean, again, we're so out on a limb here, I have no clue. But Rupert Murdoch fundamentally is a tabloid guy. He's fundamentally a newspaper man. This is like the Epstein story is just the wet dream of every single story that Rupert Murdoch has ever done. I mean, this is exactly what the Sun and the Daily Mail and the New York Post and all of these stories have been, newspapers would have been all over if this involved anybody other than Donald Trump. I mean, the New York Post has said nary a word about this, which is fascinating because this is just completely so up Rupert Murdoch's alley. On the other hand, Laughlin has a business to run. And he understands that this is probably suicidal for businesses, suicidal for the business, suicidal for the network, which is the cash cow. I mean, don't forget, the newspapers are losing money. Where the money comes from is Fox News. And Trump knows that. And Trump knows that. And Trump's FCC is just, has all the power to do this. And they've proven they can. I mean, look, they held up as much as the Ellisons have been really close to Trump, as much as they've been currying favor with him all these years. The FCC, at Trump's behest, I assume, held up approval of the merger between Paramount and Skydance and said publicly that this was only going to happen once they resolved the lawsuit. And that's the lawsuit against 60 Minutes, I should say. That's huge. I mean, you're literally having the FCC admit that until the president gets a payoff, they will not approve a business merger. If they're doing that to Larry Ellison and his son, why in the world wouldn't they do that to Rupert Murdoch and his son? To make them bend the knee, to make the Murdochs finally understand, and I think this has always galled Trump, that Rupert Murdoch has consistently made it clear Trump wasn't, as you said, his choice in 2016 wasn't his choice this time around, to make it clear that it's Murdoch who has to bend the knee, that they're not equal, that Murdoch can screw around, that Donald Trump can own Rupert Murdoch anytime he wants. And I think this is the way he's going to prove it.
Well, then why would Murdoch sign off on this story? Why would Murdoch have been allowing the Wall Street Journal op-ed board to write a plethora of op-eds that are taking on Trump in the last 6 months? Why would he go down that path if everything you're saying, if he's scared of potential Trump power against him with the FCC?
I don't think he thought that Trump was going to come after him personally. And I don't think he assumed, after everything that Fox and the New York Post have done for Trump, that Trump would be crazy enough to bite the hand that has fed him all these years. And I think that's a huge miscalculation. I also think the Wall Street Journal would have rebelled. I mean, it's a real newspaper with real journalists. Emma Tucker is a real executive editor. The people who wrote that story are incredible reporters. And for Murdoch to have stepped in and killed that story, I think you would have seen mass resignations at the Wall Street Journal. It would have destroyed the crown jewel of his newspaper empire if he had killed that story.
I also think there's a reason why the person that handed over that evidence, I think they chose the Wall Street Journal on purpose. I also think that was part of this whole process to stick it in the eye to Trump to have the exclusive come out in the conservative-leaning newspaper. So there's a lot of twists and turns here. I'm not so sure that Rupert and Lachlan would come to the same, as you said, conclusion of what to do about it. But I'm going to give Rupert more credit in having something up his sleeve to outsmart Trump on this.
You know what? That's what everybody thought about Dominion, and then it almost cost Donald Trump. The one thing that's interesting about Rupert is Donald Trump cost Rupert nearly $1 billion because of that nonsense Dominion lawsuit. The lawsuit was not nonsense because
that wasn't Trump's fault. That was Fox's fault and the journalists' fault for going with that story.
They had to, because Trump was telling people right after 2020 this election was stolen. And Fox is not agreeing with me, so go watch OAN or go watch Newsmax. And they were starting to lose viewers. And so
they could have just said the election was stolen. They didn't have to blame it on Dominion.
1,000%. But they had to kiss the ring and prove to Trump that they were good boys and girls, and they had to come back to the table and make him happy. And they overplayed their hand, and Rupert understands they overplayed their hand. And at the end, Donald Trump has made a tremendous amount of money for Rupert Murdoch in so much as that he's been gold mine for ratings. On the other hand, he's also cost him almost $1 billion. And so I'm sure there's not much love lost there. But when it comes down to it, I just think that Rupert Murdoch and Lachlan, and maybe there's going to be a split between them, but Lachlan's the one nominally in charge right now. Lachlan's going to say, you know what? I really don't care about your newspapers. That's not where we make money. They want to go into streaming. They want to go into all sorts of things that are just newspapers or, old hat. It's not the way to make money. Don't care about the Wall Street Journal. Don't care about the New York Post. but we got to keep Fox around, and we cannot have this guy come back to Fox
Okay,
News.
2 other things to throw into the pot. Number one, the first thing that's going to happen if this lawsuit moves forward is Trump is going to be deposed. He will never be deposed on this. He's putting out on his social media that he can hardly wait for Rupert to be deposed. Didn't Rupert sit for a deposition for Dominion? I'm trying to remember because
He did, and apparently
that was going to be that they'd settle before that. So they went so far as to sit for depositions, which normally is when things settle because you never want to put your top executives out there for those kinds of questions. So the first thing is that Rupert, I don't think minds being deposed in this.
After, I know reporters who covered that case really well. Rupert was not well during that deposition. He did not come across well. He showed his age. I don't know that Fox would want to put, or Dow Jones or anybody would want to put Rupert Murdoch through that again 2 or 3 years down the road where he's even older and frailer.
Yeah, but they definitely would want to put Trump through it. So Trump has more to lose in the deposition than Murdoch does. So that's my first point. The second thing is, Rupert and Lachlan lost that whole family battle situation about taking away the power from the other siblings. So Fox News may not be what Fox News is anymore once Rupert dies. I mean, you've got 3 other siblings who are going to potentially have the power to overpower Lachlan and change what Fox News is. So that's not that far into the future.
Well, we don't know, right? We don't know what Rupert's health is. His mother lived to be 100 and something years old. I don't remember how old he is, but I think he's in his early
94.
94. So, okay, does he have the staying power to outlast Donald Trump's presidency, assuming Trump leaves in 3.5 years? Maybe. I think they're not thinking about how this is going to go after Rupert is dead. I think they're thinking, what do we do to take care of the situation sooner rather than later? And, it's interesting. You and I disagree on this. I think Disney or ABC settled right before depositions. I think Dow Jones is going to settle right before depositions. And I think the way they're going to settle is it's going to be a rounding error. They're going to pay $15 million, which is the going rate, I guess, for this kind of stuff. And no harm, no foul, another $1 million for Trump's lawyers. And that's that.
And every story that Trump doesn't like, he's going to sue, and everyone's going to that is the end of journalism, which is a whole different conversation. I know many people are already saying because Meta, Twitter, CBS, and ABC already caved that it's already the end of journalism. Could be, but I think if this one, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think Rupert's going to settle on this. I really, I don't think he is. But we will.
We will see.
Nobody knows, right? That's what makes the conversation interesting. Okay, we have a question from Instagram. What do these lawsuits do for the voices of journalists? Well, we're talking about that. They're trying to quell the voices of journalists. And so, I think, gosh, this just changes the whole landscape of being a journalist. Really, not only personally for the journalists, but especially for editors and owners of outlets, because they're the ones that are making the final calls in these situations. I mean, reporters go out and source these stories, but then they go to editors, and editors have to make sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, right? I mean, in the good old days, and I think on these stories especially, you had to have at least 2 sources. According to Trump, they can't be anonymous. That's totally not true. I mean, they can be anonymous to the public when you do the story. To you, they're not anonymous, right? So that you know who these people are. But we could go down the whole rabbit hole of that we would have never had any Me Too stories out there unless people were anonymous. So I just worry about the state of journalism as every other journalist is worrying about it right now. So ironically, I'm going to be supporting Rupert Murdoch to not cave to Donald Trump on this, because I think Trump has more to lose than Murdoch.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more cynical than you. And I think that it's the opposite. I think Donald Trump has a lot more to gain than Rupert Murdoch and Fox News. And Murdoch knows it. And this is Frankenstein's monster, because had Donald Trump not been invited onto your show, Gretchen, back in the day, every week, I'm not, I shouldn't say your show. Had you not had to sit, had you not had to sit there and deal with Donald Trump on Fox and Friends every single week, spouting his birther bullshit, which elevated him in the eyes of the now MAGA faithful and was really the launch pad for his presidential campaign. Had that not happened, I don't know where we'd be today. So in some sense, this is the kind of crazy poetic justice that you can't even, I mean, like the best author in the world couldn't come up with this twist. This is just an incredible twist. But
and I'll add another twist in there. We all remember that our alleged perpetrator, Roger Ailes, died in 2017. If we think back to the inner workings of what we can talk about at Fox, which isn't much, we all know that a lot of people were scared of Ailes, not just us. I mean, Trump to a certain degree knew that Ailes held power over him. The only thing that I would like to see Roger Ailes for ever again in life would be to see how he would have handled this. Because I'm not so sure that we would be in this situation that we're in. I don't want to give him any credit for anything in life, but I think it would be fascinating from a political point of view to see what would have happened if Ailes was still living and running Fox when Trump was president.
Here's the one thing that was interesting. Well, many things that were interesting about Roger Ailes, not always good, but here's the one thing about Roger Ailes that people probably know if they know anything about him, which is that nobody was bigger than the network. And the reason the Five was created, which Roger Ailes told me repeatedly when I used to be on that show and he used to dangle it out in front of me, was that the reason he created the Five after Glenn Beck left or was fired, I don't know what happened to Glenn Beck. I don't know if he was fired, but after these parted ways, was because he could take any 5 random people off the street and put them in those chairs and make them stars. And the message was to everybody else that you're not bigger than me and you're not bigger than this network. I can make you and I can break you. And that applied to everybody. It didn't matter if you were Bill O'Reilly, and it didn't matter if you were Sean Hannity, and it doesn't matter who you were. He could do it. And he's right to some extent, because as you said, Bill O'Reilly left and they put Tucker Carlson in, who did it even better. And then Tucker left and they put in Jesse Waters. He's doing fine. And then once Jesse says something that'll be a bridge too far, even for Fox News viewers, they'll put, the next intern in and that guy will do well too. So Roger Ailes would never have allowed Donald Trump to become bigger than the network, even if he was president of the United States, because remember, presidents used to go and kiss the ring. All of them. I remember Mitt Romney, you remember this, every time he would come into Fox to do an interview, he'd go upstairs and meet with Ailes. And I'm sure the Bushes did too, and so on and so forth. And so nobody was ever going to be bigger than the network, which meant that nobody was going to be bigger than Roger Ailes. And Donald Trump has become bigger than the network. And we see that now. And that's the whole point of what I guess I'm saying, is that he is so much bigger than the network that he can destroy the network if he so chooses. I do not know, as you said, if Roger Ailes were still alive, that he ever would have allowed Trump to get this big. But the people who took over for him are not particularly clever when it comes to this kind of stuff. And all they care about is keeping their jobs. They don't have a long view the way that he did. So they allowed the inmates to start running the asylum. And that is exactly what is happening right now.
Yep. I mean, I think it's described as rudderless. I've described it that way before. Again, we're not giving Ailes any credit in life, but it would be interesting to see how this would have transformed, because I completely agree with you on where we would be in all of this. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see, because now Trump is saying that his DOG is going to go down and interview Ghislaine Maxwell, and I'm sure that'll come out exactly as they want it to.
Oh, God. If you're Ghislaine Maxwell, can I give you my conspiracy theory on what happened with this Wall Street Journal story?
Now you have conspiracy theories?
It's not a conspiracy theory. This is an educated guess. This is an educated guess about what happened. I think this notebook came from Ghislaine Maxwell. I think Ghislaine Maxwell, and you and I talked about this, but Ghislaine Maxwell waited to file that appeal to the Supreme Court until after Trump won, because I think she was convinced he was going to pardon her because she knows what she knows. And ultimately, when that didn't happen, she handed that notebook over to, I have no evidence to back this up. This is my total educated guess here, / conspiracy theory. She handed that notebook over to the Journal because she knows that would get Trump's attention. And then people close to her leak a story the last couple of days saying that she is documenting everything very carefully, that if anything happens to her, everything's down in writing and she's giving it to people so that people know exactly what happened. She's not forgotten anything. That is a message for an audience of one. And that audience of one has suddenly sent his deputy attorney general to go and talk to her. And suddenly, why would you talk to her? Why would you talk to a convicted child sex trafficker? Why?
I know.
What's the point of somebody of Todd Blanche's stature speak to Ghislaine Maxwell?
Well, let me throw out being devil's advocate again.
Okay.
I think they are bringing this up today because yesterday stories started floating that that people in Congress were going to somehow figure out how to call her to testify at a hearing, and that's where you would hear everything, right? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be able to Trumpify it. So I think that's how they came up with this. Imagine if they were actually spending time running the government.
Well, but I think we're saying the same thing, Gretchen, because fine, he's going to go talk to her and he's going to say to her, don't testify in front of Congress. Now, if she's subpoenaed, that's a different story, but she's not going to get subpoenaed by this Congress. I mean, maybe if the Democrats take over again, but don't talk to her.
No. Look, in the House, they got 11 Republicans who want to release all the evidence.
They want to release the evidence, but they're not going to subpoena her to testify, right? Releasing the evidence is different, and it's not binding. It's a non-binding resolution. So, okay, you're on record saying we should release, and the DOJ is going to say, oh, we can't because of the yada yada. So it's not they're going to force anybody's hand.
Yeah, but that at their own peril. At their own peril, because that's not going to satisfy the base and now 90% of the American public that wants more information about this story. This has been the worst crisis PR situation in the history of one of them.
Well, let me put my crisis PR hat on here to tell you what I think they're doing. He's going to go meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, and he's going to send a message to Ghislaine Maxwell. Hey, Ghislaine, is there? I don't know. Hypothetically, I have no evidence of this either. Is there a Bill Clinton in your life? Is there a high-profile Democrat somewhere that was involved in your stuff? Maybe you should give that person up. And then maybe we'll talk about a reduced sentence. I don't know if they could do an explicit pardon, but maybe we'll do a reduced sentence because 20 years is a really long time for you, Ghislaine. You didn't have sex with any of these. I mean, I don't, she did.
No, she did. No, the allegation.
But see, my point is she did, but they're going to make it be like she was a victim of Epstein too. She was brainwashed. And ultimately what's going to end up happening is that whatever is in there is obviously so bad that they would rather take the hit of giving her a reduced sentence and saying she served her time, she's been through enough, let her go serve home confinement or wherever they want to send her, or just give her an outright pardon. If she gives up, some Democrat who will then be the shiny object, and MAGA will say, we knew it. Now at that point, if you are a survivor of Epstein, and you are somebody who knows much more because you were trafficked to people that Trump may not want disclosed out there, do you finally say, you know what, if they're doing this to this woman that did this to us, who found us, who groomed us, who trafficked us, who had sex with us, who told us to have sex with Jeffrey Epstein and all these other men, we're going to finally speak up. Like, the one thing that I think they're not counting on is that a lot of these survivors have been silent so far. And look, they have the fear of God in them because the most prolific survivor who did speak up, Virginia Giuffre, is dead by her own hand. But obviously this had, I think by her own hand, but this obviously had some effect on her. So I don't think they want to be dragged through the mud. But on the other hand, are they really going to be silent if this administration gives a sweetheart deal to the woman who did this to them, the last person remaining who they can hold accountable for Jeffrey Epstein's crimes since he's now dead? I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, and by the way, we're not even saying that Trump is anywhere mentioned in any of these millions of pages of documents. I we got to go, but I also think there may be something else in there that has nothing to do with what we think it is. That may be the reason why. It just none of it makes sense from the crisis PR, why would you let your main people go out there and talk about this and say, we're going to release everything and not put a kibosh on that if you didn't want to release it now? It makes absolutely no sense.
We don't know what we don't know. Maybe he brought in Dan Bongino and Kash Patel into the administration so he could bring them to heel so they wouldn't be going out there as the main people on podcasts trashing them, trashing the Epstein thing. I mean, maybe one way to do this is to bring them into the tent. And
yeah, but then you wouldn't have, but then you would have said to them, if he has so much power, stop talking about Epstein. You wouldn't have had Pam Bondi going out there handing out binders to people that had nothing in them and saying.
Well, I think the binder thing was and remember, she gave them the binders and said, this is Act 1. And they were all like, great, fantastic. Look at everything and how transparent they are. It's not like there was a scandal there. I think it's that she had a huge unforced error. She like put her foot in it. And I don't think this was thought out and said, oh, yeah, because she was asked, I've got the binder sitting on my desk right now to review. I think that was like let's push this down the road. I don't have an answer for you because I'm going to review it, thinking it was going to die down. And it would have probably died down had she then not stupidly put out a memo saying, there's nothing to see here, we're done. What she should have done from a crisis comms perspective is kept saying, there's so much to review here. We have so much to review, and we're going to keep reviewing it. While Todd Blanche quietly spoke to Ghislaine Maxwell and said, hey, we're going to give you a sweetheart deal if you implicate people who are not Donald Trump. The way they handled it after she said, there's nothing to see here, is where the stupid unforced error was on all of their parts. And that was, again, just a complete huge cell phone, which I can't believe they did. But we got to go. But this is just very fascinating. I'm very curious. I'd love to hear from people. Who do you think is right here, Gretchen or me? Because we obviously disagree on what Rupert Murdoch is going to do. And, I don't think either of us knows, obviously. But, and this is.
Okay, I'm going to throw out one other red herring.
Go ahead.
And we'll leave it at this.
Okay.
Could there, because you know how my mind works.
Yeah.
Could there be a situation where, just like with Iran, where Trump knew in advance that Iran, to save face, was going to bomb the U.S. base in Qatar or wherever it was, and Trump, being the only president in the history to ever tell people that that's how it was going to be laid out, because I'm sure this has happened before.
Right.
Could it be that Murdoch and Trump are in on this together, and that for Trump to save face, because he needs to sue news organizations because he's done it in the past, and to save face with his base, he needs to do it, that there's some sort of an inside deal here, that this is never going anywhere? I'm just going to leave that out there.
I don't know that Murdoch would be the useful idiot for that one, because he's getting sued, and whatever happens now, he's going to either look weak or it's going to devolve. So okay. He did file the lawsuit. That wasn't a joke. He filed it.
Okay.
So we'll see. But this is interesting. We can have this conversation for 20 more hours, but we got to go. All right. Great to see you, and we'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.